The gravity of Earth had always felt wrong to Kayla. 5 years of living on this harsh, beautiful planet hadn't changed that. Every morning began with the same sensation, that extra pull in her joints, the slightly uncomfortable weight of her body, a constant reminder that she didn't belong here. Today was different only because she had decided it would be her last Earth sunrise. Kayla stood at the edge of the rusty platform atop Jonas Creed's desert compound, watching the Nevada sun claw its way above the horizon. Below her, the sprawling junkyard of humanity's discarded weapons gleamed dully in the early light, a testament to the peculiar human habit of turning obsolete tools into new possibilities. "You're up early, Princess," came a gravelly voice behind her. Jonas Creed, former Special Forces trainer, full-time hermit, and her reluctant mentor for the past 5 years, stood in the doorway. His weather-beaten face betrayed nothing, but Kayla had learned to read the subtle tells, the tightened grip on his coffee mug, the slight forward lean of his posture. He knew something was coming. "I received a transmission," Kayla said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "From Galoran." Jonas raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Another human trait she'd come to appreciate, the ability to communicate volumes through silence. "My half-brother Terex is planning a coup. He'll execute the king, my father, along with anyone loyal to the throne." She turned to face him fully, her violet eyes catching the sunrise. "The same father who called me a coward before the entire royal court. The same father who exiled me to this place as his final insult." The memory still burned. Standing before the Galoran court, refusing to participate in what was essentially a massacre of civilians on a newly conquered world. Being stripped of her royal insignia, her family crest, her very identity. And then, the ultimate disgrace, being dumped on Earth, a planet the Galorans considered barely civilized, to live out her days in obscurity. Jonas took a slow sip of his coffee, seemingly unmoved by her revelation. "And you're telling me this because I'm leaving," Kayla said. "I need to know if they sent the transmission as bait, or if it's genuine. Either way, I'm going back." "To save the man who threw you away?" Jonas's voice was flat, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. Kayla looked down at her hands, stronger now, calloused from years of training. When she'd first arrived on Earth, they'd been soft royal hands, useless for anything but ceremonial gestures. Now, they knew how to fight, build, survive. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I can't just stay here while my homeworld burns." Jonas set his mug down on the railing with a deliberate clank. "5 years ago, you showed up here with nothing but fancy clothes and a death sentence. You couldn't even light a fire without setting yourself ablaze." A rare hint of a smile touched his lips. "Now, you can outshoot most of my old unit, jury-rig alien tech with human parts, and talk your way out of situations where talking should be impossible." He paused, his gaze drifting to the vast desert beyond. "But Galoran isn't Earth. They don't fight like us, think like us. They value strength above all else, and their definition of strength is limited." "I know what they value," Kayla said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Honor, tradition, ritual combat, bloodlines, the ability to crush your enemy in sanctioned, ceremonial ways while reciting ancient battle poems. And you're going to walk back in there, alone, and what? Challenge your brother to a poetry slam?" Jonas snorted. Kayla felt the smile spreading across her face before she could stop it. The wild, dangerous smile Jonas had once told her made her look terrifyingly human. "No," she said, turning to look at the workshop below, where her custom project sat waiting. "I'm going to walk in there with everything you've taught me, and I'm taking the jetpack chainsaw." Jonas stared at her for a long moment before bursting into laughter, a sound so rare it startled a nearby desert hawk into flight. "They won't know what hit them, he finally said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. But you know you don't have to do this alone. Kayla shook her head. This is my fight. Is it? Jonas challenged. You're not fighting for yourself, or you'd have gone back years ago for revenge. You're fighting for people who don't even know they need saving yet. That's not just your fight. That's the kind of fight that deserves backup. He straightened. Suddenly, every inch the military commander he'd once been. Besides, I've spent 5 years training the galaxy's most stubborn alien princess. I deserve to see the payoff. It's not a spectator sport, Kayla protested. No, Jonas agreed, his expression growing serious. It's not. But we don't save people because they deserve it. Kayla, we save them because we can. That's the first rule of being human. At least, the kind of human worth becoming. Kayla felt something catch in her throat. Not quite emotion, but close. Another human contagion she'd contracted. Fine, she said. But we do this my way. Earth tactics. No honor. No fair fights. Jonas grinned. That wolfish expression that had terrified her when she'd first arrived. Now, she recognized it as the face of someone about to enjoy watching the universe get turned upside down. Honey, he said, we're going to teach those pompous space Romans what happens when you dump your problems on Earth and expect them to disappear. He gestured toward the workshop. Now, about that jetpack chainsaw. I've made some modifications. The royal palace of Galoran loomed over the capital city, like a mountain made of crystal and ancient bone. Its spires caught the light of the twin moons, fracturing it into thousands of prismatic shards that rained down on the streets below. For Kayla, approaching it now felt like a fever dream. 5 years ago, she'd been dragged from those gleaming halls in chains, her royal insignia torn away, her status stripped. Now she was returning in a salvaged cargo ship, wearing a patchwork armor of human and Galoran technology. With a human at her side, and plans that would have been considered sacrilege in her former life. Impressive, Jonas muttered, peering through the viewscreen. Very Space Versailles meets Mordor. The Galoran architectural philosophy is intimidate before you negotiate, Kayla explained, running through the pre-landing checks with practiced efficiency. Those crystal spires? They're positioned to blind approaching ships during certain hours. The bone-white portions are actual bone, from the ancient beasts their ancestors slew to claim this world. Charming, Jonas said dryly. Remind me why they think humans are the barbarians. Because you solve problems with duct tape and WD-40 instead of 1,000-year-old rituals, Kayla replied, allowing herself a small smile. The comm system crackled to life, and a stern Galoran voice filled the cabin. Unidentified vessel. You have entered restricted royal airspace. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed. Kayla took a deep breath and activated the response channel. This is Earth Ambassador Kayla aboard the human diplomatic vessel Chainsaw. Jonas raised an eyebrow at her choice of ship name, but she ignored him. Requesting immediate audience with the royal court on matters of interplanetary security. There was a long pause. Earth has no recognized ambassador to Galoran, the voice finally replied, suspicious. That status changed 3 standard months ago, Kayla lied smoothly. Perhaps your diplomatic registers are outdated? I'd be happy to forward the formal recognition documents. Though I should warn you, causing a diplomatic incident by refusing entry to an official Earth ambassador might violate Sections 4 through 7 of the Interplanetary Security Accord. More silence. Kayla knew they were scrambling to check if such an accord even existed. It didn't. Your vessel is cleared for landing at the diplomatic docking bay. The voice eventually conceded. Any weapons must be declared and secured. You will be escorted directly to the diplomatic receiving chamber. Acknowledged, Kayla said, cutting the transmission. Jonas let out a low whistle. Not bad. First lie of the campaign goes to the princess. Former princess, Kayla corrected, guiding the ship toward the indicated landing coordinates. And that wasn't a lie. It was a negotiating position. Something else I learned on Earth. As they prepared for landing, Kayla felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. 5 years ago, she'd been cast out for refusing to participate in violence against innocents. Now, she was returning to potentially unleash chaos on her own people. "Having second thoughts?" Jonas asked quietly, reading her expression. "No," Kayla said, securing the final landing sequence. "Just measuring the cost." Jonas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The best fighters always do." The ship settled onto the landing pad with a gentle thud. Through the view screen, Kayla could see a contingent of royal guards approaching, their ceremonial armor gleaming, their postures rigid with traditional Galoran military precision. "Remember," Jonas said, checking his concealed weapons one last time, "we're not here to win by their rules. We're here to change the game entirely." Kayla nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Let's introduce Galoran to Earth diplomacy." The moment they stepped onto Galoran soil, Kayla felt the familiar pull of her home planet's gravity, lighter than Earth's, making her feel as though she might float away if not careful. But 5 years of training under Earth's heavier pull had transformed her body. She felt stronger here than she ever had before. The guards approached, their captain stepping forward with barely concealed disdain. "Ambassador," he acknowledged with the slightest bow, just enough to satisfy protocol without showing respect. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly when he got a closer look at her face. But training kept his expression neutral. "Captain," Kayla responded, adopting the formal Galoran greeting stance but deliberately omitting the traditional submission gesture. "This is my security advisor, Jonas Creed of Earth." The captain's gaze flickered to Jonas, taking in his weathered human appearance with poorly disguised contempt. "Weapons must be declared. We carry none that would qualify under Galoran statutory weapons classifications," Kayla said truthfully. What they carried were Earth weapons, which Galoran law had never bothered to categorize, a loophole she'd been counting on. The captain hesitated, clearly wanting to argue but finding no procedural grounds to do so. "Follow me," he finally ordered, turning on his heel. As they walked through the gleaming corridors, Kayla felt the stares of courtiers and servants alike. No one recognized her openly. Her appearance had changed too much for that. But there was something in their gazes that suggested uncertainty, as if trying to place a half-remembered face. "Nice place," Jonas commented casually, though Kayla could tell he was mapping every exit, every potential defensive position. "Very shiny." The Galoran nobility believe that light is the physical manifestation of truth, Kayla explained quietly. "The more reflective surfaces in your dwelling, the more truthful and honorable you are presumed to be." "Explains why they dumped you on Earth," Jonas muttered. "We're about as non-reflective as it gets." Before Kayla could respond, they were ushered into the diplomatic receiving chamber, a smaller version of the Great Throne Room, but no less imposing. Crystal columns stretched to a ceiling painted with scenes of Galoran military victories. The floor was inlaid with precious metals, forming ancient battle maps. And there, seated at the far end on a smaller version of the royal throne, was the last person Kayla had expected to see, Terex himself. Her half-brother had changed little in 5 years, still imposingly tall, even for a Galoran, with the characteristic violet eyes of the royal bloodline, though his were several shades darker than Kyla's. His ceremonial armor was more elaborate now, indicating his rise in status, and the traditional warrior's markings on his face had been extended to symbolize new victories. He didn't recognize her, not yet. "Earth Ambassador," he greeted, not bothering to stand. "I am Prince Terex, royal heir and protector of the sacred bloodline. What matter of interplanetary security is so urgent that it requires such unexpected diplomacy?" Kayla stepped forward, positioning herself precisely at the distance that protocol demanded for equals, not supplicants. The subtle breach of etiquette was not lost on the courtiers, who shifted uncomfortably. "A matter concerning the stability of the Galoran royal succession," she said clearly, her voice carrying in the acoustically perfect chamber. "I have intelligence indicating a plot against King Zorith, a coup designed to fracture the royal line and destabilize the quadrant." Terex's expression didn't change, but Kayla caught the slight tensing of his jaw, a tell she remembered from childhood, when he was caught in a lie. Serious allegations," Terex said smoothly, "from an ambassador whose credentials seem to have materialized rather suddenly. I don't recall Earth showing such concern for Galoran internal affairs before." "Earth's interests have evolved," Kayla replied, "as have its capabilities." Terex leaned forward slightly, studying her more carefully. "And why would Earth care who sits on the Galoran throne? Instability breeds conflict. Conflict disrupts trade. Disrupted trade affects Earth's economy." Kayla shrugged, an intentionally human gesture that seemed to irritate Terex. "It's simply good business to keep our interplanetary neighbors from descending into civil war." A murmur ran through the assembled courtiers. Civil war was a concept Galorans found distasteful, not because of the violence, but because of the implication of disunity and dishonor. Terex rose from his seat, his movements deliberately slow and controlled. "These are matters for the King's Council, not a diplomatic reception. If you have actual intelligence to share, it will be evaluated through proper channels." "Of course," Kayla agreed. "I would expect nothing less from the prince who has so faithfully served as his father's right hand." She paused deliberately. "Even when that service has included preparing for his father's removal." The chamber went deathly silent. Terex's face hardened into a mask of royal indignation. "You dare accuse the royal heir of treason? Based on what evidence?" Kayla smiled, the particular smile Jonas had taught her, the one that suggested you knew something your opponent desperately needed to know. "Evidence that I will present to the king directly, as is my right as an ambassador." "Your rights extend only as far as Galoran hospitality permits," Terex snapped, his composure cracking. "And you test the limits of that hospitality with these accusations." He gestured sharply, and the guards along the walls stepped forward. "Until your credentials can be fully verified and your information assessed, you will be our honored guests in the diplomatic quarters." His eyes narrowed. "For your own protection." "Of course." "Of course," Kayla echoed, not resisting as guards moved to escort them out. "Though I should mention, Earth diplomatic protocol requires that I make contact with my government every 6 standard hours. Failure to do so automatically triggers certain contingency protocols." It was another bluff, but one calculated to buy them time. Galorans understood and respected protocols, even foreign ones. As they were led from the chamber, Jonas leaned close and whispered, "House arrest on our first day? You work fast." "Phase 1 complete," Kayla murmured back. "Now we're inside the palace with an excuse to be here." "And your brother?" Kayla glanced back at Terex, who was watching them leave with thinly veiled fury. "He didn't recognize me, but he will. And when he does—" "All hell breaks loose?" Jonas suggested. "No," Kayla said, a plan already forming in her mind. "When he does, the real game begins." The diplomatic quarters were luxurious by most standards. A suite of rooms with sweeping views of the capital city, furnished with the finest Galoran craftsmanship. But Kayla recognized it for what it was: a beautiful prison, with guards stationed outside and surveillance systems monitoring every move. "Not bad," Jonas commented, running his hand along an ornate table made from material that resembled petrified lightning. "I've been detained in worse places." "Don't get comfortable," Kayla said, activating a small device from her belt. The device emitted a subtle pulse that interfered with the surveillance systems. Another human technology the Galorans hadn't bothered to guard against. We have about 4 hours before they notice the surveillance loop, and even less time before Terex figures out who I really am. Jonas nodded, immediately switching to mission mode. What's the play? Kyla pulled out a portable holographic projector and activated it, displaying a detailed schematic of the palace. Terex will have most of his loyalists positioned near the king's chambers and the central defense systems. But there's a weak point he won't have considered. She zoomed in on a section of the palace that appeared unremarkable. The ancient archives. They connect to the old service tunnels that run beneath the throne room. Royal historians are the only ones with access, and they're traditionally neutral in succession disputes. Let me guess, Jonas said, studying the schematic. You spent your misspent youth exploring these tunnels instead of attending royal etiquette lessons? Kayla allowed herself a small smile. The tutors always said I had an unhealthy interest in history. So we break out, sneak through these archives. And then what? Walk into the throne room and announce that Junior is planning patricide? No, Kayla said, switching the display to show a different section of the palace. We find evidence first. Terex is too careful to have left anything obvious. But there's one place he might have slipped up. She pointed to a chamber marked in the old Galoran script. The Hall of Strategy. All military plans must be registered there before execution. It's an ancient tradition. If Terex is planning a coup, some version of those plans will be recorded. Jonas frowned. Seems like a security risk, keeping records of your military plans. It's not about security. It's about honor, Kayla explained. In Galoran culture, an unregistered military action is considered dishonorable, regardless of its success. Terex would never risk the dishonor of an unregistered coup, even if registering it meant creating evidence. Your people have some strange priorities, Jonas muttered. Said the man who built a chainsaw with a jetpack attached to it, Kayla countered. That's different, Jonas protested. That's just good engineering. Kayla shook her head, switching off the projector. We need to move quickly. The changing of the guard happens in 20 minutes, which gives us a brief window. She reached for her pack and began assembling what looked like a bizarre hybrid of Earth and Galoran technology. Time to introduce Galoran to another Earth tradition. Which is? Jonas asked, checking his own equipment. Kayla held up what appeared to be a smoke grenade modified with Galoran crystal components. The distraction. The distraction worked better than anticipated. The modified smoke grenade, enhanced with harmless but intensely aromatic earth chemicals, sent the guards into a panic. Galoran olfactory senses were considerably more acute than human ones, and the combination of scents Kayla had chosen were particularly disorienting to them. Slipping out during the confusion, they made their way through the lesser-used corridors of the palace. Kayla, leading with the confidence of someone returning to familiar territory. Despite 5 years away, her body remembered these paths, the slight incline of certain hallways, the way the light filtered through specific crystal panes at this time of day. Your brother will figure out who you are soon enough, Jonas said quietly as they navigated a narrow passage. What's the plan when that happens? Let him, Kayla replied. Once he knows, he'll be angry, and anger makes him careless. It always has. They reached an ornate door, inscribed with ancient Galoran symbols. Kayla pressed her palm against a specific constellation of markings, and the door slid open silently. Royal blood still has its uses, she murmured, leading Jonas into the archives. The vast chamber beyond was a testament to Galoran obsession with history. Crystalline data storage units lined the walls, each containing millennia of records. The ceiling arched high above them, depicting the mythological creation of the Galoran people in luminescent murals. The historian should be on his meal break, Kayla whispered. We have about 15 minutes. Jonas nodded, taking position near the door to watch for any approach while Kyla moved quickly to a specific section of the archives. Her fingers traced the storage units until she found what she was looking for: the military records of the current royal cycle. Activating the unit, she navigated through the Galoran data system with practiced ease, searching for any records associated with Terex's personal command codes. Most were standard military exercises, border patrols, ceremonial reviews of the troops. There, a file marked with the royal seal, but coded for limited access. Kayla bypassed the security using an old override she'd learned as a child, another benefit of being underestimated by her tutors. The file opened, revealing detailed plans for what was euphemistically called a Royal Succession Acceleration Initiative. Tactical formations, guard rotation schedules, secure communication protocols, all pointing to a coordinated strike against the king and his loyal supporters, scheduled for the upcoming Festival of Ascension, just 2 days away. "Found it," she called softly to Jonas. "And it's worse than we thought. He's planning to eliminate not just the king, but the entire royal council. Anyone who might oppose him. Hundreds of people." Jonas joined her, looking over the plans with a professional soldier's eye. Classic purge strategy. Take out all potential opposition in one coordinated strike. Establish dominance through fear. Solidify power before anyone can organize resistance. He pointed to a section of the document. These formations, they're designed for maximum civilian casualties. He wants witnesses. Kayla felt cold anger building inside her. This went beyond a power grab. This was a fundamental rewriting of Galoran society, replacing their complex honor system with simple brutality. "We need to copy this," she said, connecting a small Earth device to the Galoran system. The hybrid technology Jonas had helped her develop created a perfect duplicate of the files, evidence they could use. "Ambassador," a quiet voice came from behind them. "Or should I say, Princess Kayla." They turned to find an elderly Galoran standing in the shadows, Master Historian Vexil, his aged face showing no surprise at finding the exiled princess in his archives. "Master Vexil," Kayla acknowledged, tensing for a confrontation. But the old historian merely bowed, a proper, respectful bow that recognized her royal status despite her exile. "I thought I recognized your access pattern in the system. You always had a distinctive way of navigating the historical matrices." "Are you going to alert the guards?" Kayla asked directly. Vexil's ancient eyes studied her for a long moment. "I serve history, not individuals. And history has shown that those who erase the past often create bloody futures." He gestured to the files she'd accessed. "I have watched Prince Terex's plans with growing concern. His vision of Galoran has no place for historical nuance, or historians." "You've known about this?" Jonas asked, suspicious. "I am required to register all strategic plans without judgment," Vexil explained. "But nothing prohibits me from assisting those who might contextualize such plans within a broader historical framework." His gaze returned to Kayla. "The king should know what his son intends." "The king cast me out," Kayla said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Why would he listen to me now?" "Because you are not who you were," Vexil said simply. 5 years on Earth have changed you. I can see it in how you move, how you speak, even how you access data." He moved to another console and activated it, revealing a secret passage behind a data wall. "This will lead you to the old service tunnels. From there, you can reach the king's private meditation chamber. He spends the hour before sunset there, alone." Kayla hesitated, looking at the passage and then back at the elderly historian. "Why help me?" "Because I remember a young princess who spent hours in these archives, reading not just about victories and conquests, but about reforms, peaceful transitions, cultural exchanges." His voice softened. "Galoran needs that perspective now more than ever." A distant alarm began to sound. Vexil looked up sharply. Terex's forces are moving. You must go now. Kayla downloaded the last of the evidence and disconnected her device. Come with us, she urged the historian. When Terex realizes you've helped me. My place is with the archives, Vexil said firmly. Some must remain to ensure the truth survives. Whatever comes next. He pressed something into her hand, a small, crystalline key. This will grant you access to the king's private chamber. It was your mother's once. Kayla stared at the key. Emotions she'd suppressed for years, threatening to surface. Her mother, the king's first wife, had died when Kayla was still a child. But this small connection to her sent an unexpected wave of memory washing over her. Thank you, she managed to say. Vexil bowed once more. History rarely offers second chances. Princess, use yours wisely. With that, he turned and walked calmly toward the main entrance, presumably to delay anyone who might follow them. I like him, Jonas commented as they entered the secret passage. Reminds me of my old history professor. Equally cryptic, slightly less dramatic. Kayla clutched the crystal key tightly as the passage sealed behind them. Let's hope we live long enough to make it into the history books he's so fond of. The service tunnels were ancient, dating back to the earliest days of the palace. Narrow and utilitarian. They stood in stark contrast to the opulent chambers above, a physical reminder of the division between those who ruled and those who served. Kayla and Jonas moved quickly through the dimly lit passages, following a path that Kayla half remembered from childhood explorations. Your brother has mobilized his forces early, Jonas observed, checking a small device that monitored palace communications. He knows you're here. Good, Kayla said grimly. Let him scramble. Every soldier he sends looking for us is one not positioned for his coup. They reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. Kayla hesitated, trying to orient herself. This way, she finally decided, taking the right-hand passage. The meditation chamber should be directly above us in about 200 meters. As they proceeded, the tunnel began to change character, the rough stone giving way to the same crystalline material that dominated the palace above. Light filtered down through what appeared to be one-way transparent sections of floor. Observation points, Kayla explained in a whisper. The ancient kings wanted to monitor their servants without being seen. Paranoid bunch, weren't they? Jonas remarked. With good reason, Kayla replied. Royal assassination was practically a cultural pastime in the early dynasties. They paused beneath one such observation point, and Kayla peered up cautiously. Through the transparent crystal, she could see a portion of a chamber decorated in the royal colors. A solitary figure sat in meditation, his back to them, King Zorith, her father, distinguishable by the unique pattern of his ceremonial armor. That's him, she whispered, an unexpected tightness gripping her chest. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been condemning her to exile, his face hard with disappointment and rage. Jonas studied her expression. You okay? Kayla nodded, pushing down the conflicting emotions. There should be an access panel near here, a way up into the chamber. They found it a few meters ahead, a small hatch set into the ceiling of the tunnel. Kayla removed the crystalline key Vexil had given her and inserted it into an almost invisible slot. The hatch silently slid open, revealing a short ladder leading up into what appeared to be a concealed entrance to the meditation chamber. I'll go first, Kayla said. He's less likely to immediately attack his own daughter. You sure about that? Jonas asked skeptically. No, Kayla admitted. But I'm sure he'll hesitate just long enough for you to back me up if needed. She climbed the ladder quickly and emerged into the chamber through what looked like an ornamental floor panel. The king remained in his meditative pose, seemingly unaware of her presence. Father, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. King Zorith didn't move for a long moment. Then, without turning, he spoke. I wondered when you would return. His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep, resonant, with the particular cadence of royal Galoran speech. He still hadn't turned to look at her. "You know why I'm here," Kayla said, stepping fully into the chamber, as Jonas silently emerged behind her. "To warn me that my son plans to kill me?" Now Zorith did turn, his violet eyes, so like her own, fixing on her face. "Or to witness it yourself." Kayla was momentarily thrown by his directness. "You know about Terex's plans?" A smile, cold and without humor, crossed the king's face. "Of course I know. I am the king. There are no secrets in my palace that remain hidden from me for long." "Then why haven't you stopped him?" Kayla demanded, confusion and anger rising within her. Zorith stood, his imposing height and royal bearing filling the chamber with his presence. Age had added more silver to his hair, but had done nothing to diminish the aura of absolute authority he projected. "Because, daughter, I needed to see what would happen." His gaze shifted to Jonas, assessing the human with a slight narrowing of his eyes, before returning to Kayla. "I needed to know if Terex had the courage and cunning to seize power, and I needed to see if you would return." The implication struck Kayla like a physical blow. "You sent the transmission. You wanted me to come back. I arranged for you to receive certain information," Zorith acknowledged. "Though I confess, I expected you to return seeking vengeance, not to save the father who exiled you." Jonas had remained silent until now, but at this, he let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You used your own assassination as bait to test both your children? That's some next-level parenting." The king's eyes flashed with momentary anger at the human's insolence, but he controlled it quickly. "The Galoran throne cannot afford weakness. Terex has strength, but lacks wisdom. Kayla had wisdom, but lacked strength." His expression softened almost imperceptibly as he looked at his daughter. "Or so I believed." "You still think of strength only in terms of traditional Galoran values," Kayla said, fighting to keep her emotions in check. "But there are other kinds of strength. Earth taught me that." "Yes," Zorith agreed, surprising her. "The human homeworld, a planet of contradictions, technologically primitive by our standards. Yet somehow, they've survived encounters that have destroyed far more advanced civilizations. They find unorthodox solutions. We call it thinking outside the box," Jonas offered. "A curious phrase for a curious species," the king mused. He returned his attention to Kayla. "You've changed, daughter. You move differently, speak differently." His eyes narrowed analytically. "Even your strategic thinking has been contaminated by human influence." "Enhanced," Kayla corrected firmly. "Not contaminated. And yes, I've changed. Earth doesn't value blind obedience or ritual combat. They value adaptation, innovation, finding the third option when everyone else sees only two." Zorith studied her for a long moment. "And that is why you're here? To offer a third option between Terex's coup and my continued rule?" "I'm here because innocent people will die if Terex succeeds," Kyla said. "His plans go beyond simple succession. He wants to fundamentally reshape Galoran society into something more absolute." "I've seen his plans," Zorith said dismissively. "Ambitious, but ultimately just the vision of an impatient heir." "With respect, Your Majesty," Jonas interrupted. "Your son's plans include provisions for what on Earth we would call ethnic cleansing. He's not just targeting your supporters. He's targeting anyone who represents the more moderate factions of your society." This seemed to give the king pause. "Show me," he commanded. Kayla produced the data device and projected the copied plans into the air between them. "These sections here, and here. Terex has identified entire cultural subgroups for reassignment. It's a euphemism for elimination." Zorith's expression darkened as he studied the details she highlighted. "This goes beyond what I had anticipated." He doesn't just want your throne, Kayla pressed. He wants to create a Galoran that exists solely to conquer, without the philosophical and cultural checks that have balanced our society for millennia. The king was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant as he processed this information. And what would you have me do, daughter? Kill my son? Imprison him? Either action would only serve to create a martyr for those who share his vision. There is another way, Kayla said, activating a different section of the projection, a modification she had made to Terex's own plans. One that uses Galoran traditions against him. As the king studied her alternative strategy, his expression shifted from skepticism to grudging respect. The ancient challenge of minds, he murmured. A tradition not invoked for 7 generations. A public battle of wits and honor rather than physical combat, Kayla explained. Once challenged, Terex cannot refuse without losing all legitimacy in the eyes of traditionalists, and it must be conducted before the entire court, with the ancient protocols that forbid violence during the proceeding. You would challenge your brother to this contest? Zorith asked, studying her closely. I would, Kayla confirmed, as is my right as royal blood, regardless of exile status. The king's mouth curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. And if you win? When I win, Kayla corrected. Terex will be bound by the ancient laws to renounce his claim to the throne and enter exile, the same punishment he planned for you, but without the bloodshed. And you would take his place as heir? Zorith asked, a calculating gleam in his eye. Kayla shook her head. No, I have no desire for the throne. I would establish a council of minds, representatives from all Galoran cultures, including those Terex planned to eliminate. Together, they would advise the king and eventually select a worthy successor based on merit rather than bloodline. Jonas watched this exchange with fascination, seeing the complex interplay of Galoran politics unfolding before him. He'd trained Kayla for years, but seeing her navigate her native culture with both insider knowledge and outsider perspective was something else entirely. Zorith was silent for a long moment, weighing his daughter's proposal. Finally, he spoke. Your solution is unexpected, not traditionally Galoran, yet cloaked in our most ancient traditions. He straightened, his decision made. Very well. I will sanction this challenge of minds. But be warned, daughter, Terex is no fool. Despite his brutality, he will fight with every advantage he can muster. I'm counting on it, Kayla said, a dangerous glint in her eye. Because while he's been studying traditional Galoran battle strategies, I've been learning from humans, beings who turn disadvantage into an art form. The king's gaze shifted once more to Jonas. And this human? What role does he play in your strategy? Advisor, Kayla said simply, and friend. Zorith seemed to find this concept foreign, but didn't press further. The challenge must be issued in the Great Hall, before the assembled court. Terex is there now, consolidating support for his initiative. There is no better time. Then let's not keep him waiting, Kayla said, a cold determination settling over her. She turned to Jonas. Ready to see how Galorans handle family disputes? Jonas checked his concealed weapons and gave her a grim smile. After 5 years of training you, wouldn't miss it for the world. The Great Hall of Galoran was a marvel of ancient engineering and artistic grandeur. Vast crystal columns supported a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the sky itself. The floor was a mosaic of precious metals depicting the founding of the Galoran Empire, and the walls were lined with the battle standards of 1,000 conquered worlds. When Kayla entered, flanked by her father on one side and Jonas on the other, the assembled court fell into a shocked silence. Many of the older courtiers recognized her immediately, the exiled princess, returned from disgrace. Younger nobles looked confused, whispering urgently to their elders for explanation. And at the far end of the hall, surrounded by his loyal supporters, stood Terex. His expression shifted from surprise to rage to calculated control in the space of seconds. "Father," he greeted, his voice carrying across the vast space. "I see you've welcomed an unexpected guest." His eyes fixed on Kayla, hardening with hatred. "The exile returns, and in such interesting company." King Zorith stepped forward, his royal presence commanding immediate attention from the entire court. "Prince Terex, Princess Kayla has returned to Galoran on a matter of grave importance to the throne." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles at the king's use of Kayla's royal title, a clear indication that her status had been at least partially restored. "Indeed," Terex responded, his voice dripping with false concern. "What matter could be so grave that it requires the intervention of one who rejected our most sacred traditions, one who chose cowardice over duty?" Kayla stepped forward, and the whispers intensified. She was not dressed in traditional Galoran royal attire, but in a hybrid armor of her own design, functional, intimidating, and utterly unlike the ceremonial garb the court expected. At her side was a weapon unlike anything seen on Galoran before, the modified chainsaw, currently dormant but unmistakably alien in design. "I speak of tradition today, brother," Kayla said, her voice clear and strong. "The most ancient of our traditions, those that predate conquest and speak to the true heart of Galoran civilization." She moved to the center of the hall, positioning herself on the symbolic judicial mark inlaid in the floor, a place where, by ancient law, she could not be touched or silenced. "I invoke the challenge of minds," she declared formally. The hall erupted in gasps and exclamations. The challenge was legendary, part of their oldest stories but rarely invoked in modern times. Terex's face betrayed momentary confusion before his education caught up with his surprise. "The challenge of minds," he repeated, contempt evident in his tone. "A relic of our past, before we understood that true strength lies in action, not words. If you fear a battle of intellect, brother, you may decline," Kayla said, deliberately provocative, though such hesitation might suggest you doubt your mental capacity. The courtier's reaction told her the barb had struck home. In Galoran culture, questioning someone's intellectual fitness was a grave insult, particularly for a royal. Terex's jaw tightened visibly. "I fear nothing from you, sister, least of all a contest of minds. I accept your challenge." His eyes narrowed. "Though I question what right an exile has to invoke ancient law." "The right of blood," King Zorith interjected before Kayla could respond. "Which remains, regardless of status or circumstance. The challenge has been properly invoked and accepted. It will proceed according to tradition." Terex bowed stiffly to his father, though Kayla could see the calculations running behind his eyes. This unexpected development had disrupted his carefully laid plans for the coup, forcing him to adapt. "As tradition demands," the king continued, "the challenge will take place tomorrow at high sun, before the assembled court and any citizen who wishes to witness. The stakes must be declared now, before witnesses." Kayla stepped forward. "When I prevail, Prince Terex will renounce all claim to the throne, disband his loyal forces, and enter exile as I once did. His royal succession acceleration initiative will be terminated, and all associated orders rescinded." Another wave of shocked murmurs swept through the court at this explicit reference to Terex's secret plans. His supporters looked to him in confusion and alarm, while those loyal to the king exchanged meaningful glances. "You speak of plans that don't exist," Terex countered smoothly. "But very well, and when I prevail, you will acknowledge your treason before the court, confess to fabricating these accusations, and submit to execution rather than the mercy of exile you received before." "Agreed," Kayla said without hesitation. Jonas, who had remained silently observant until now, shifted uncomfortably at this high-stakes gamble, but he knew better than to intervene, This was Kayla's arena now. "The terms are set," King Zorith declared. "Until the challenge concludes, both participants are protected by ancient law. No harm may come to either, by their own hand or another's. Any violation nullifies the offender's right to victory." He fixed his gaze on Terex as he emphasized this last point. Terex bowed again, the picture of compliance, though the rage in his eyes was poorly concealed. "If that is all, Father, I have preparations to make for tomorrow's intellectual exercise." "One more matter," the king said. "As is traditional, each participant may select a second, one advisor to assist in preparation, but who may not speak during the challenge itself." "I select Lord Commander Drav," Terex said immediately, gesturing to his military chief, a hulking warrior known for his tactical brilliance, if not his ethical flexibility. "I select Jonas Creed of Earth," Kayla said, causing another ripple of surprise through the court. Selecting an alien as her second was unprecedented. "A human," Terex laughed openly. "You entrust your life to a species that barely understands interstellar travel? How appropriately self-destructive." "I entrust my life to someone who understands that strength takes many forms," Kayla replied evenly. "Something you have yet to learn, brother." The tension between them was palpable, crackling across the space like electricity. "The court is dismissed," King Zorith announced. "Tomorrow, we witness the challenge of minds." As the nobles began to disperse, Terex approached Kayla directly, stopping just outside the range of casual eavesdropping. "Clever move, sister," he said quietly. "But delaying the inevitable won't save you or our father. My supporters are already in position throughout the palace. Even if you somehow win tomorrow, which you won't, do you really think words and ancient traditions will stop what I've set in motion?" Kayla smiled. That particular human smile that Jonas had taught her. The one that suggested you knew something your opponent desperately needed to know. "I'm counting on your arrogance, Terex. Always have been." She glanced meaningfully around the hall. "By the way, have you noticed how many of your loyal supporters are suddenly having very intense conversations with the king's advisors? Amazing how quickly allegiances shift when secret plans become public knowledge." Terex's eyes darted around, noting with alarm the very interactions Kayla had mentioned. "This isn't over," he hissed. "No," Kayla agreed. "It's just beginning. Sleep well, brother. Tomorrow's going to be a long day for you." As Terex stalked away, Jonas moved to Kayla's side. "You know he's going to try something tonight," he murmured. "Challenge protection or not." "I'm counting on it," Kayla replied quietly. "That's why I made sure to mention his plans in front of everyone. He's now faced with a choice. Wait for the challenge and risk more of his supporters abandoning him as they learn details of his plans. Or make a desperate move tonight and violate the ancient protection. Either way, he loses," Jonas concluded with admiration. "Not bad for your first day back in royal politics." "I had a good teacher," Kayla said, allowing herself a small smile. "Now, let's prepare. Tonight is when the real work begins." As Kayla had predicted, Terex made his move that night. She and Jonas had been given quarters in the royal wing, a courtesy to a challenger that also served as a convenient way to keep them under observation. But Kayla had anticipated this and come prepared. 3 guards outside the main door, probably more in the adjoining corridors, Jonas reported, after checking their luxurious prison. "Surveillance systems in every room except the bathing chamber, and I'm not entirely convinced about that either." "Standard royal security," Kayla confirmed, activating a small device similar to the one she'd used earlier. "This will loop the surveillance feeds, but we need to move quickly. Terex won't wait long." As if summoned by her words, a soft chime indicated someone at their door. The guards outside acknowledged the visitor, and the door slid open to reveal a royal attendant, bearing what appeared to be ceremonial garments. "By order of the king, For tomorrow's challenge, the attendant announced, bowing low. Kayla recognized the trap immediately. The garments would almost certainly contain tracking devices. Possibly worse. But she accepted them graciously, maintaining the pretense. Once the attendant had departed, she carefully examined the clothing. Neurotoxin, she confirmed, showing Jonas the nearly invisible crystalline needles embedded in the fabric. Slow acting, designed to take effect midway through the challenge tomorrow. Very traditional. Your family has a fascinating approach to conflict resolution, Jonas commented dryly. Kayla set the garments aside. Terex is getting desperate. The public revelation of his coup plans has accelerated his timeline. She checked a small monitor she'd placed near the window. His forces are mobilizing now, earlier than we expected. So much for ancient protection, Jonas muttered. He'll maintain plausible deniability, Kayla explained. The attack will appear to be rogue elements acting without his knowledge. He'll express shock and grief over my unfortunate death, while using the chaos to eliminate my father and secure the throne. What's our move? Jonas asked, checking his weapons. Kayla smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face with excitement. We give him exactly what he's expecting, and then we change the game completely. She reached for her pack and removed her most unusual creation, the infamous jetpack chainsaw that had begun as a joke during training but had evolved into something far more symbolic. The device was a masterpiece of hybrid technology, Galoran precision engineering, combined with Earth's chaotic innovation. Time to introduce Galoran to Earth-style problem-solving, she said, strapping the device to her back. Ready? Jonas grinned, that wolfish expression that had once terrified her. Born ready. When Terex's assassination team breached their quarters 20 minutes later, they found exactly what they expected. 2 bodies, apparently killed in their sleep. The team leader reported success through their secure channel and withdrew as ordered, never noticing the slight shimmer in the air that indicated holographic technology at work. By then, Kayla and Jonas were already moving through the service tunnels beneath the palace, heading not away from danger, but directly toward it, toward the Great Hall where, according to Kayla's monitoring device, Terex was gathering his core supporters for what he believed would be his ascension to the throne. Your brother's confident, Jonas observed as they navigated the narrow passages. Mobilizing his forces before confirming our deaths isn't the most cautious move. Terex has always valued speed over certainty, Kayla replied. It's what makes him dangerous and predictable. They reached a junction in the tunnels, and Kayla paused, consulting her mental map of the palace. This way, she decided, taking the left passage. There's an access point that opens behind the ceremonial battle standards in the Great Hall. We'll be able to see and hear everything without being detected. As they approached their destination, the sounds of a large gathering became audible. Dozens of voices engaged in urgent conversation. The metallic clink of ceremonial armor. The distinctive resonance of Galoran command codes being issued. Kayla and Jonas positioned themselves at a small observation grate, gaining a partial view of the Great Hall. Terex stood on the central dais, resplendent in full battle regalia, addressing what appeared to be several hundred armed supporters. Confirmation that both the exile and her human pet have been eliminated, he was saying, satisfaction evident in his voice. The king remains in his private chambers, believing himself protected by ancient traditions. A ripple of disdainful laughter moved through his assembled forces. The time has come, Terex continued, his voice rising with fervor. Tonight, we cleanse Galoran of weakness and hesitation. Tonight, we restore the true path of conquest and strength that is our birthright. His supporters roared their approval, weapons raised in salute. The king's loyalists are scattered and confused, Terex went on. Our agents have disabled the central defense systems. When the signal is given, we move simultaneously against all designated targets. He raised a ceremonial blade, that Kyla recognized as an ancient symbol of succession. "For the future of Galoran." "For the future," the crowd echoed. Kayla turned to Jonas, her expression grim but determined. "He's accelerated everything. The coup is happening now." "What about your father?" Jonas asked. "If Terex is here, the team sent to eliminate the king hasn't moved yet." Kayla reasoned. "They'll wait for Terex's direct command. Killing the king is a privilege he'll want to control personally." She activated a small communication device, another hybrid of Earth and Galoran technology that operated on frequencies the palace security wouldn't monitor. "Master Vexel," she said quietly, "Phase 2 is active ahead of schedule. Implement archive protocol immediately." The elderly historian's voice came through clearly. "Understood, Princess. The archives are secured, and the contingency has been activated. The king has been moved to the sanctuary." "Good," Kayla replied. "Stand by for Phase 3. She turned back to Jonas. "My father is safe for now. Vexel has taken him to a secure location known only to the royal historians. A sanctuary built for exactly this kind of crisis." "Convenient," Jonas remarked. "Galoran has a long history of succession disputes," Kayla explained with a grim smile. "Now for the next part?" She removed a small device from her belt, what appeared to be a modified Galoran communication module. "This will tap into the palace announcement system. Every chamber, every corridor will hear what happens next." Jonas nodded, understanding her plan. "Creating witnesses." "Exactly," Kayla confirmed. "Terex wants to control the narrative, to present his coup as a necessary action against corruption and weakness. We're going to give him a different audience than he expected." She adjusted the settings on her jetpack chainsaw, checking the fuel levels and ignition system. "When I give the signal, be ready to move. Things are about to get very chaotic." "My specialty," Jonas assured her, readying his own weapons. Kayla took a deep breath, centering herself as she'd been taught on Earth. 5 years of training, of rebuilding herself from the broken exile into something new. Something that was neither fully Galoran nor human, but a synthesis of both, all leading to this moment. "Remember," she said quietly, "the goal isn't to defeat Terex's forces in combat. It's to expose him, to force him to reveal his true nature before witnesses he can't silence." "The best victory is the one where your enemy defeats himself," Jonas quoted, one of the first principles he'd taught her. Kayla nodded, a cold determination settling over her. "Let's give my brother the audience he deserves." With that, she activated the palace-wide communication system and kicked open the access panel. The sound of the panel crashing open drew all eyes in the Great Hall. For a moment, there was complete silence as Terex and his supporters stared in disbelief at the figure emerging from the hidden passage. Kayla stood before them, illuminated by the hall's crystal lighting. The jetpack chainsaw strapped to her back giving her a silhouette unlike anything seen before in the royal palace. Behind her, Jonas moved into position, his earth weapons ready but not yet drawn. "Greetings, brother," Kayla called, her voice amplified by the palace announcement system, echoing not just through the Great Hall, but throughout the entire palace. "I believe you were discussing the future of Galoran. Please, don't let me interrupt such an enlightening discourse." Terex's shock quickly transformed into rage. "How?" he began, before controlling himself. "An impressive trick, sister, but ultimately futile. You've merely saved us the trouble of hunting you down." He gestured sharply, and his warriors moved to surround Kayla and Jonas, weapons raised. "Before you give the order to attack," Kayla said calmly, "you might want to consider your audience." She gestured to the communication module at her belt. "Every word spoken in this hall is now being broadcast throughout the palace, to the royal guard, to the servants, to the nobles in their chambers. Everyone is listening. Terex." Uncertainty flickered across his face as he realized the implications. "Go ahead," Kayla continued. Explain to all of Galoran why you've assembled an armed force in violation of royal law. Explain your Royal Succession Acceleration Initiative. Explain why you sent assassins to murder the king's honored guests, protected under ancient challenge rights. Murmurs ran through Terex's assembled forces as they looked to their leader for guidance. Many had been told they were responding to a security threat, not participating in high treason. Terex's expression hardened as he calculated his options. You think broadcasting your accusations changes anything? By dawn, I will control all communication systems. The official record will show that you and Father were victims of an Earth-backed assassination plot, a tragedy that necessitated my immediate assumption of the throne. A convenient narrative, Kayla acknowledged. But narratives require control. And you've already lost that, she smiled. That dangerous human smile. While you were busy gathering your forces here, Master Historian Vexel has been transmitting the full details of your coup plans to every historical archive on Galoran and to our allied worlds. The unedited plans, Terex, including your lists of those to be reassigned. For the first time, real fear showed in Terex's eyes. The exposure of his plans in their entirety would turn even his more moderate supporters against him. The Galoran nobility might tolerate a clean succession through combat, but the systematic purge he had planned would violate too many of their cultural taboos. You're bluffing, he snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Am I? Kayla challenged. You've always underestimated me, brother, just as you've underestimated Earth and its people. You see them as primitive, chaotic, weak. What you fail to understand is that their chaos is their strength. They adapt. They innovate. They find ways to win when winning seems impossible. She took a step forward, and despite themselves, several of Terex's warriors stepped back. There was something in her posture, her confidence, that unsettled them, something unfamiliar and therefore unpredictable. I challenge you, here and now, to complete the ancient challenge of minds, Kayla declared formally. Not tomorrow in ceremonial circumstances, but tonight, before these witnesses. Unless, of course, you fear to match your intellect against mine without your carefully prepared advantages. Terex laughed, though it sounded forced even to his own ears. You wish to engage in philosophical debate while surrounded by my elite warriors. Your time on Earth has clearly damaged your reasoning. Sister. Not debate, Kayla corrected. The true challenge of minds as practiced by our ancestors. A test of wisdom, strategy, and honor. 3 questions and 3 answers from each challenger, judged not by a panel, but by the truth itself. This was a gamble. The original form of the challenge was rarely used in modern times, in part because it relied on ancient technology that supposedly could detect falsehood and dishonor in the participants' responses. Most modern Galorans considered it semi-mythical. But Kayla had spent years in the archives studying these ancient traditions, and she knew what Terex didn't, that the technology was real, preserved by the historians, and still functional. A convenient appeal to superstition, Terex scoffed. Next, you'll suggest we consult the spirit of our first king for guidance. Not superstition, came a new voice from the entrance to the Great Hall. Tradition, history, truth. Master Historian Vexel entered, flanked by several other historians, bearing what appeared to be an ancient, crystalline device. The elderly Galoran moved with surprising dignity and authority, the assembled warriors parting before him almost instinctively. Such was the cultural respect for the keeper of history. The lens of truth, Vexel announced, indicating the device, used in the original challenges of mind before we became too sophisticated for such direct methods. Terex's eyes narrowed with suspicion. What trick is this? No trick, Prince Terex, Vexel replied calmly. Merely the implementation of the challenge your sister has lawfully invoked. The lens reveals the truth of the challenger's words and the honor of their intentions. It can be fooled by neither technology nor training. Kayla could see Terex calculating rapidly, weighing the risk of refusing the challenge against the risk of proceeding. Refusal would be seen as weakness by his supporters, many of whom were already looking uncertain. But submitting to the lens meant abandoning his carefully constructed narrative. Unless, of course, you fear what the lens might reveal, Kayla suggested, deliberately provocative. That decided him. Terex's pride would not allow him to show fear before his assembled forces. Very well, he said coldly. The challenge proceeds. But when this farce concludes, sister, your death will not be as quick as I had planned. The historians arranged the ancient device in the center of the Great Hall. The lens itself was a complex crystalline structure that seemed to capture and refract the light in impossible ways, creating patterns that shifted and changed as if alive. The rules are simple, Vexel explained for the benefit of all witnesses. Each challenger asks 3 questions of the other. Each must answer truthfully. The lens will reveal deception, evasion, or dishonorable intent. The winner is determined by both the wisdom of their questions and the honor of their answers. He gestured for Kayla and Terex to position themselves on opposite sides of the lens. As the invoker of the challenge, Princess Kayla asks first, Vexel declared. Kayla stepped forward, her eyes meeting Terex's across the ancient device. The Great Hall had fallen completely silent, the warriors and historians alike watching with rapt attention. Through the communication system, she knew. The entire palace was listening. My first question, Kayla said clearly. Prince Terex, do you believe the king, our father, has ruled Galoran with honor? It was a deceptively simple question, but one that forced Terex to either disavow his justification for the coup or admit to dishonorable intentions. Terex's jaw tightened. The king has ruled according to his understanding of honor, he answered carefully. But his understanding has become compromised. He sees restraint where action is needed, moderation where strength is required. The lens shifted, its patterns neither confirming nor denying his response, indicating a partial truth or a truth colored by perspective rather than objective fact. My turn, Terex said. Princess Kayla, did you return to Galoran to claim the throne for yourself? No, Kayla answered simply. I returned to prevent unnecessary bloodshed and to protect Galoran's cultural heritage from being reduced to a single dimension of its identity. The lens flared with a clear, bright pattern, truth unambiguous. Murmurs ran through the assembled witnesses. Many had assumed the exiled princess had returned seeking power or vengeance. Her truthful denial of such motives unsettled their expectations. My second question, Kayla continued. Prince Terex, would your planned reforms after taking the throne include the elimination of cultural groups you consider insufficiently dedicated to military expansion? Terex hesitated, aware of the trap. The plans Vexel had distributed would confirm whatever answer he gave. I would reorganize certain elements of Galoran society to better serve our destined path of conquest, he finally said. Those unwilling to embrace this destiny would be given appropriate opportunities to reconsider their position. The lens darkened ominously, its patterns turning jagged, a clear indication of deception. The lens disagrees with your characterization, Prince Terex, Vexel observed neutrally. Anger flashed across Terex's face. The device is ancient and imperfect, he snapped. My second question, Princess Kayla, do you still believe your refusal to participate in the subjugation of the Nerat system was justified, despite the dishonor it brought to our family? Yes, Kayla said without hesitation. I believe that massacring civilians who had already surrendered was neither honorable nor necessary, regardless of how tradition framed it. The lens flared bright again, truth. Some of Terex's supporters shifted uncomfortably. The subjugation of the Nerat system had been controversial even among traditionalists, though few had dared speak against it publicly. "My final question," Kayla said, her voice steady and clear. "Prince Terex, if you became king, would you rule in service to all Galorans, or only those who share your vision of aggressive expansion?" It was the most direct challenge yet, forcing Terex to either lie outright about his intentions or admit to a fundamentally self-serving conception of leadership. Terex's expression darkened with fury. "I would rule as Galoran requires, with strength and vision. Those who recognize the true path would prosper. Those who cling to outdated notions of restraint and moderation would need to adapt or face the consequences of their failure." The lens patterns shifted erratically. Not a direct lie, but a truth so twisted by perspective that it could not be considered honorable. Final question," Terex growled, abandoning all pretense of ceremonial language. "Princess Kayla, having spent 5 years among humans, do you still consider yourself truly Galoran, or have you become a contaminated hybrid? Neither one thing nor the other." It was a clever attack, appealing to the Galoran obsession with purity of lineage and tradition. Kayla smiled, recognizing the trap and stepping directly into it. "I am neither purely Galoran as tradition defines it, nor human," she acknowledged. "I am something new, a synthesis that takes strength from both worlds. And in that synthesis, I believe, lies the future not just of my own path, but of Galoran itself." The lens blazed with the brightest light yet, truth so pure it was almost painful to witness. The great hall fell completely silent. Kayla's answer challenged the very foundation of Galoran identity, the belief that their culture was complete and perfect as it had been for millennia. Yet the lens had confirmed her sincerity with unprecedented clarity. Vexel stepped forward, his ancient eyes moving between the two royal siblings. "The challenge is complete," he announced. "By the witness of the lens and all assembled here. Princess Kayla has spoken with honor and wisdom. Prince Terex has spoken with—" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Partial truth colored by ambition." "This is absurd," Terex snarled, his hand moving to his ceremonial weapon. "An ancient toy and the word of a historian do not determine the future of Galoran." "No," Kayla agreed, her voice still amplified throughout the palace. "The future of Galoran is determined by choices, yours, mine, every Galoran who witnesses this moment. You chose deception and violence. I choose a different path." "Fine words from someone surrounded by my warriors," Terex sneered, drawing his blade. "History is written by the victors, sister, and I will personally ensure your chapter is very brief." He gestured sharply, and his warriors moved forward, but with noticeable hesitation. The challenge had affected them more than Terex realized. Many had joined his cause believing it to be honorable, and the lens had cast doubt on that assumption. "You still don't understand, do you?" Kayla said, almost pitying. "This was never about defeating you in combat. It was about exposing you, to your supporters, to all of Galoran. Every word, every revelation, broadcast throughout the palace." She activated her jetpack chainsaw, the distinctive roar of its engine echoing through the great hall, like nothing heard there before. The hybrid weapon, part Earth brutality, part Galoran precision, symbolized everything Terex feared: innovation, adaptation, synthesis. "Now," Kayla said, "we can do this the traditional way, with you ordering your increasingly uncertain warriors to attack, while I demonstrate what 5 years of Earth combat training looks like." Or, she deactivated the chainsaw, the sudden silence, almost as startling as its roar had been. "You can acknowledge the challenge outcome, preserve what honor remains to you, and accept the same exile you planned for others." Terex looked around, suddenly aware of the changed atmosphere among his supporters. Where before, there had been unquestioning loyalty, now he saw doubt, hesitation, the beginning of withdrawal. "You think this display changes anything?" he demanded, desperation edging into his voice. "Galoran needs strength, not philosophical debates and ancient ceremonies." "Galoran needs balance," Kayla corrected. "Strength tempered by wisdom, tradition enlightened by innovation. We were once more than conquerors. Terex. We were philosophers, artists, explorers. Your vision would reduce us to a single dimension of our heritage." She turned to address the assembled warriors directly. "You followed my brother believing his cause was honorable. The lens has shown otherwise. Now you must choose. Continue down a path that violates our deepest traditions of honor, or step back and help forge a new way forward that honors all aspects of what makes us Galoran." One by one, the warriors began to lower their weapons. Some stepped back, creating distance between themselves and Terex. Others looked to each other, to the historians, uncertain but no longer unquestioning. Terex saw it happening, the disintegration of his support, the collapse of his carefully constructed power base. With a roar of rage, he lunged forward, blade raised, directly at Kyla. "If they won't follow, I'll finish this myself," he shouted. Kayla didn't activate her chainsaw. She didn't need to. In attacking her during a formal challenge, Terex had just violated the most sacred protection in Galoran tradition, committing an act of dishonor so profound that no warrior would follow him now. As Terex's blade descended, Jonas moved with the speed and precision that had made Earth's special forces legendary. A single shot from his concealed weapon struck Terex's blade, shattering it in a shower of crystalline fragments. Terex stood frozen, staring at the broken hilt in his hand. "It's over, brother," Kayla said quietly. "You've lost not through defeat in battle, but through your own actions. The true measure of a leader isn't their ability to destroy, but their capacity to build something worth preserving." Terex's face contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You think this is victory? You've changed nothing. The weaknesses that plague our society remain. What you see as weakness, I see as strength," Kayla replied. "The ability to question, to adapt, to evolve. These are not flaws, brother. They're the qualities that have allowed civilizations throughout the galaxy to survive when rigid empires crumbled." A contingent of royal guards entered the Great Hall, led by the captain who had first greeted Kayla upon her arrival. But now, instead of disdain, his expression showed something closer to respect as he surveyed the scene. "By order of King Zorith," the captain announced, "Prince Terex is to be taken into custody for violations of sacred challenge protocols and conspiring against the throne." Terex looked around wildly, seeking any remaining allies, but found none. His supporters had either withdrawn or now stood with uncertain allegiance, unwilling to oppose the royal guards after witnessing his dishonorable attack. "This isn't over," Terex hissed, as the guards surrounded him. "Galoran will require strength eventually, and when that day comes, they'll remember me differently." "Perhaps," Kayla acknowledged. "History has a way of reinterpreting events to suit the needs of the present. But for now, your chapter closes." As Terex was led away, the Great Hall erupted in urgent conversations. Nobles who had remained neutral throughout the confrontation now approached, eager to establish their position with the apparent victor. Warriors from Terex's force stood in clusters, discussing their options in low voices. Jonas moved to Kayla's side. "Not bad for your first day back in politics," he murmured. "Though I notice you didn't actually need the jetpack chainsaw." "Sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones you don't have to use," Kayla replied with a small smile. "But don't worry. I have a feeling its moment will come." Master Vexil approached, bowing with genuine respect. "Princess, the king requests your presence in the ancestral chamber. He has been monitoring the events here and wishes to speak with you immediately." Kayla nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of what had just transpired and what was still to come. the crisis had been averted. But the underlying issues that had allowed Terex to gather support remained unaddressed. "Lead the way," she said. The ancestral chamber was the oldest part of the royal palace, predating even the Great Hall. Its walls were not crystal, but ancient stone, worn smooth by countless generations. Instead of the ostentatious displays of conquest that dominated the rest of the palace, here the decorations were simpler, the actual artifacts of Galoran's earliest days as a civilization. King Zorith waited for them beside the founding fire, a flame said to have burned continuously since the first king united the ancient clans. In this light, he looked older, the weight of his reign evident in his face. "Father," Kayla acknowledged, stopping at the traditional distance. "Daughter," he replied, studying her with those penetrating violet eyes, so like her own. "You have prevented a coup, exposed a traitor, and potentially redirected the course of Galoran society, all without shedding a drop of royal blood. Impressive." "I had help," Kayla said, glancing at Jonas, who stood respectfully to the side. "Yes, your human advisor." The king regarded Jonas with a mixture of curiosity and reluctant respect. An unconventional choice, but evidently an effective one. "Earth specializes in unconventional solutions," Jonas commented. Zorith almost smiled. Almost. "So I've observed." He returned his attention to Kayla. "The question now becomes, what happens next? Terex has been contained, but the sentiment that fueled his support remains. Many Galorans believe as he does, that our future lies in conquest, not contemplation. They believe that because for generations, that's all they've been taught." Kayla responded. "But our history contains multitudes. Father, we were explorers before we were conquerors, philosophers before we were warriors, artists before we were rulers." "Ancient history," Zorith dismissed. "The galaxy has changed. Power is the only currency that matters now." "Is it?" Kayla challenged. "Then why did Earth, technologically inferior by our standards, successfully resist not just Galoran expansion, but that of 3 other major empires? Why do they now thrive, while the great powers find themselves increasingly isolated?" The king frowned, considering. "Their methods are unpredictable. Their strength comes from diversity," Kayla pressed. "Of thought, of approach, of culture. They don't enforce a single vision of what their society should be. They allow it to evolve naturally, taking the best from every encounter, every challenge." "And you believe Galoran should follow this example?" Zorith asked skeptically. "I believe Galoran should remember its own example," Kayla corrected. "Before the Age of Conquest, we were known throughout the quadrant as synthesizers, taking the best ideas from every world we encountered and incorporating them into our own civilization. That was the true source of our power, not just our military might." The king was silent for a long moment, gazing into the ancient flame. "You have changed, daughter," he finally said. "There is a clarity to your vision that was absent before." "Earth has a way of stripping away pretense," Kayla acknowledged. "When you have nothing, no status, no power, no traditional supports, you discover what truly matters." "And what truly matters?" Zorith asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Adaptation," Kayla said simply. "The willingness to change when change is needed. The courage to hold fast to core principles while allowing methods to evolve. The wisdom to know the difference." Jonas watched this exchange with fascination. In the 5 years he'd trained Kayla, he'd seen her transform from a broken exile into something unique, neither fully Galoran nor human, but a bridge between worlds. Now he was witnessing her apply that perspective to the society that had rejected her. "A compelling philosophy," Zorith acknowledged. "But implementing it would require fundamental changes to our governance, our military structure, our entire social hierarchy." "Yes," Kayla agreed. beginning with the Council of Minds I proposed during the challenge. The Council. The king's expression grew calculating. A convenient solution that would conveniently remove you from the succession question. I have no desire for the throne, father, Kayla said firmly. Not as it currently exists. And yet, Zorith observed, you may be the only one capable of implementing the changes you envision. Terex's supporters would never accept a council they see as diluting royal authority. The traditionalists would view it as an abandonment of our heritage. But they might accept these changes if presented by a royal heir who has proven her strength, not through conquest, but through victory in the ancient traditions. Kayla frowned, seeing where this was leading. You're suggesting I take Terex's place as heir? I'm suggesting, Zorith corrected, that sometimes the most effective way to change a system is from within its established structures. Jonas cleared his throat. If I might offer an Earth perspective, he said, drawing both royals' attention. In our history, the most successful reformers weren't those who rejected tradition entirely, but those who reinterpreted it for a new era. They used the language and symbols of the past to build a bridge to the future. The king regarded the human with newfound interest. Your species continues to surprise me with its occasional wisdom, he remarked. Perhaps this explains my daughter's transformation. Kayla transformed herself. Jonas corrected respectfully but firmly. Earth just provided the space for her to do it. Zorith nodded, turning back to his daughter. What you propose, this synthesis of tradition and innovation, will not come easily. There will be resistance, perhaps even violence. I'm aware, Kayla said. But the alternative is stagnation, followed by collapse. Galoran cannot continue as it has been, expanding endlessly, consuming resources and worlds without evolution or purpose. Eventually, we will encounter a force we cannot overcome through strength alone. Like Earth, Zorith suggested, with the ghost of a smile. Earth is just one example, Kayla replied. There are others, civilizations that thrive not through domination, but through adaptation and cooperation. The king was silent again, his gaze returning to the ancient flame. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the formal cadence used for royal proclamations. Kayla, daughter of my first union, exiled for defiance and returned through courage. I offer you restoration to the royal line and position as first heir to the Galoran throne. Kayla felt the weight of the moment pressing down upon her. This was not what she had planned, not what she had returned for. And yet, as her father had suggested, perhaps this was the most effective path to the changes she envisioned. She glanced at Jonas, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. I accept, she said formally. With the following conditions, the Council of Minds will be established immediately, with representatives from all Galoran cultural groups. Its first task will be to draft reforms to our governance structures, military protocols, and succession traditions. Zorith's eyes narrowed slightly at these conditions, but he nodded. Accepted. What else? Terex will not be executed, Kayla continued. He will be exiled as I was, given the opportunity to learn from other worlds and, perhaps, one day, to return with new perspective. This clearly surprised the king. You show mercy to one who would have shown you none. Not mercy, Kayla corrected. Strategy. Executing him would create a martyr for those who share his views. Exile offers the possibility of transformation, as it did for me. Very well, Zorith agreed, though somewhat reluctantly. Is there more? One final condition, Kayla said. Earth will be formally recognized as a sovereign equal to Galoran, not a potential conquest or a primitive curiosity. We will establish proper diplomatic relations and cultural exchange programs. At this, the king actually laughed, a short, sharp sound rarely heard in the royal chambers. You negotiate like a human now, daughter, always seeking the unexpected advantage. He inclined his head slightly, but agreed. Earth has earned our respect, if only by producing you in your current form. Then we have an accord, Kayla said, bowing formally. Zorith returned the bow, a gesture of equals that would have been unthinkable before her exile. The formal restoration ceremony will take place tomorrow. I suggest you prepare yourself for considerable resistance from the court. I'm counting on it, Kayla replied, with that dangerous smile Jonas had taught her. Change doesn't come from comfort. As they left the ancestral chamber, Jonas fell into step beside her. First heir to the throne, huh? Not bad for someone who started out sleeping on a cot in my workshop. Don't get too impressed, Kayla said dryly. The hard part comes next. Actually implementing these reforms without triggering a civil war. Speaking of which, Jonas said, lowering his voice. What about the jetpack chainsaw? Seems a shame to have built it and not put it to use. Kayla's eyes gleamed with mischief. The restoration ceremony traditionally includes a demonstration of the heir's martial prowess. I believe the court is expecting traditional blade forms and ritual combat demonstrations. And instead? Instead, Kayla said, they're going to get their first look at Earth-style problem-solving. Hope you brought extra fuel. The grand courtyard of challenges had witnessed countless demonstrations of martial skill throughout Galoran history. Its stone floor was marked with the faint stains of blood from generations of ritual combat, and its walls bore the emblems of victorious warriors stretching back millennia. Never in its long history had it witnessed anything like what was about to occur. The entire court had assembled for Kayla's restoration ceremony. Nobles, warriors, officials from every level of Galoran society. Many had come out of curiosity, others from political necessity, and some with the barely concealed hope of witnessing a disaster. Kayla stood at the center of the courtyard, dressed not in traditional ceremonial armor, but in her hybrid Earth Galoran combat suit. The contrast between her appearance and the ornate traditional garb of the court could not have been more stark. King Zorith observed from the royal viewing platform, his expression carefully neutral, despite the murmurs of shock and disapproval rippling through the assembled crowd. The Princess Kayla will now demonstrate her martial readiness, as befits the first heir, announced the Master of Ceremonies, confusion evident in his voice as he took in her unconventional appearance. Thank you, Kayla acknowledged, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. As many of you know, I have spent the past 5 years on Earth, a planet many Galorans consider primitive, even barbaric. Today, I will demonstrate what I have learned there about the true nature of strength. She gestured, and servants wheeled out what appeared to be a bizarre contraption of metal and crystal, a training apparatus unlike anything seen before in the royal courts. Traditionally, this demonstration would involve ritual combat forms against ceremonial opponents. Kayla continued. But the challenges facing Galoran are not ceremonial, and our potential adversaries will not follow our traditions of combat. The murmurs grew louder, some openly disapproving. Kayla caught sight of several of Terex's former supporters, exchanging meaningful glances. Good. Let them be unsettled. Change began with disruption. Instead, I will demonstrate adaptive problem-solving under pressure, the approach that has allowed Earth to survive despite its technological limitations. She activated a control panel, and the training apparatus sprang to life. Holographic targets appeared throughout the courtyard, some stationary, others moving in complex patterns. Each represented a different type of challenge: tactical, strategic, ethical. The objective, Kayla explained, is not simply to eliminate targets, but to determine which require intervention and which are better left undisturbed. Strength without discernment is merely brutality. With that, she activated her jetpack chainsaw. The roar of its engine echoed off the ancient stones, causing many in the audience to flinch or cover their ears. The device ignited with a controlled burst of flame, lifting Kayla several feet off the ground, hovering in defiance of tradition, gravity, and expectation. What followed was unlike any martial demonstration in Galoran history. Kayla navigated the holographic course with breathtaking speed and precision, the jetpack allowing her to change direction instantly, to attack from unexpected angles, to redefine the very concept of the battlefield. But it was her target selection that truly demonstrated the Earth approach. Some obvious threats she ignored completely. Others, seemingly benign, she eliminated with surgical precision. Each choice revealed a strategic calculation that went beyond simple combat efficiency. From his position near the royal viewing platform, Jonas watched with professional appreciation. She was applying everything he'd taught her, not just the technical skills, but the philosophy behind them. Earth's greatest military advantage had always been its adaptability, its willingness to rewrite the rules of engagement when necessary. The court watched in stunned silence as Kayla completed the course, landing gracefully in the center of the courtyard and deactivating her improbable weapon. The silence stretched for several seconds before King Zorth rose to his feet, applauding deliberately. Protocol required the court to follow his lead, resulting in scattered, uncertain applause. Thus concludes the demonstration portion of the ceremony, the Master of Ceremonies announced, clearly relieved. Not quite, Kayla said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. There is one more demonstration, the most important one. She gestured, and Jonas approached, carrying what appeared to be a simple wooden box. From it, Kayla removed an object that caused gasps throughout the courtyard, the royal scepter of command, a symbol of absolute authority, traditionally presented to the heir only at the conclusion of the ceremony. Tradition dictates that I receive this scepter as a symbol of my right to command, Kayla said, holding it up for all to see. But the future I envision for Galoran requires a different understanding of leadership. With deliberate movements, she placed the scepter on a ceremonial stand in the center of the courtyard. Then, to the shock of the entire court, she activated her chainsaw one final time and split the ancient symbol of authority precisely down the middle. The sound of the scepter breaking seemed to echo forever in the stunned silence that followed. Leadership is not about commanding others, Kayla declared into that silence. It is about serving a purpose greater than oneself. It is about recognizing that no single perspective, no matter how elevated, can encompass all truth. She lifted the two halves of the scepter. From this day forward, one half will remain with the royal line. The other will be held by the Council of Minds, a reminder that true authority comes not from tradition alone, but from the synthesis of tradition and innovation. The courtyard erupted in chaos, shouts of outrage from traditionalists, exclamations of shock from moderates, and here and there, expressions of surprised approval from the more progressive elements of the court. King Zorth rose again, his commanding presence eventually restoring order. His expression as he regarded his daughter was complex, part frustration, part admiration, part calculation. The Princess Kayla has demonstrated both her martial prowess and her unique perspective, he announced formally. By royal decree, she is hereby restored to the royal line and confirmed as first heir to the Galoran throne. He paused, his gaze sweeping the assembled court. Furthermore, as agreed, a Council of Minds will be established to advise the throne and participate in governance. Representatives will be selected from all cultural groups within Galoran society. This announcement triggered another wave of reactions, everything from enthusiastic support to barely concealed hostility. The king allowed it to continue for a moment, before raising his hand for silence. Change comes to all civilizations, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority built over decades of rule. Those who adapt, survive. Those who resist. He left the thought unfinished, but his meaning was clear. With that, he descended from the viewing platform and approached Kayla. Taking one half of the divided scepter, he held it out to her formally. Princess Kayla, First heir of Galoran, do you accept the responsibilities of your position and swear to serve the greater good of our people? Kayla took the half-scepter, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. I do, Father, not as conqueror, but as bridge builder, not as commander, but as guide. The king nodded, a hint of pride breaking through his formal demeanor. Then it is done. The restoration is complete. As the formal ceremony concluded and the court began to disperse, some clustering in urgent conversation, others approaching to offer congratulations or thinly veiled warnings, Jonas made his way to Kyla's side. Quite a show, he commented. Especially the part with the priceless historical artifact and the chainsaw. Very subtle. Subtlety has its place, Kayla replied with a small smile. This wasn't it. Sometimes you need to make your point with a jetpack chainsaw. Speaking of which, Jonas said, now that you're officially royalty again, I suppose you'll be too busy for our little projects. Kayla regarded him thoughtfully. Actually, I was thinking the opposite. Galoran needs an Earth perspective more than ever. Someone who understands how to approach problems from unexpected angles. She paused. The Council of Minds will require an advisor on Earth affairs. Someone experienced in training stubborn aliens to think differently. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job, Your Highness? I'm offering you a challenge, Kayla corrected. Helping reshape an entire civilization isn't exactly in your former job description. True, Jonas acknowledged with a grin. But I've gotten pretty good at the impossible lately. He glanced around at the opulent surroundings. Though I'd miss my desert workshop. Hard to find quality alone time in a crystal palace. We'll build you a new one, Kayla promised. With extra space for experimental weaponry. I have a feeling we're going to need more innovations before this transition is complete. In that case, Jonas said, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. You've got yourself an advisor. Kayla took his hand, but then pulled him into a brief hug, another human custom she'd adopted. Thank you, she said quietly. Not just for this, but for everything, for seeing potential when everyone else saw failure. That's the real Earth secret, Jonas replied, momentarily serious. We're really good at finding value in things other people throw away. As they separated, a royal attendant approached, bowing nervously. Princess, the king requests your presence in the strategy chamber. The first candidates for the Council of Minds have arrived for consideration. Duty calls, Kayla sighed. Ready for your first official advisory role? Jonas straightened, adopting an exaggerated formal posture. Lead the way, Your Highness. Just one question. Does diplomatic protocol allow me to bring the jetpack chainsaw to meetings? For emphasis. Of course. Probably not, Kayla admitted, as they walked toward the palace. But we're rewriting the protocols as we go. Everything is negotiable. Behind them, the ancient courtyard stood empty, save for the servants clearing away the demonstration equipment. The divided scepter, half now carried by Kayla, half destined for the council, represented something unprecedented in Galoran history. A deliberate sharing of power, a recognition that the future required more than conquest and tradition. Above the palace, the twin moons of Galoran rose in their eternal dance, illuminating a civilization on the cusp of transformation. Whether that transformation would lead to renaissance or revolution remained to be seen. But for the first time in generations, the path forward was not predetermined by ancient protocols. It would be forged through synthesis, the best of Galoran tradition combined with the adaptability Earth had taught the once exiled princess. And perhaps, when necessary, with a jetpack chainsaw.